It's email. Makes me nuts.
Yeah. So I keep using this one.
What's that?
Do you want me to time?
Yeah, if you'd like to. Who's on the way?
She is.
I'm assuming.
Oh. No, what time it is. 2 minutes. I don't know. She was in Georgia.
She never said anything about not being here, but she's often gone. Don't seem to stick around on too many weekends.
Oh. Did you have another?
Good evening, everybody. We'll call this meeting of the Delta Township Board to order. For the board members and guests, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Trustee Wahika here. Trustee Cascarella.
Present.
Trustee Brewer. Trustee Bowen.
Here.
Treasurer Fedor.
Here.
Clerk Clark is present. Supervisor Fletcher.
Here.
You have quorum.
Thank you. Motion to excuse trustee Brewer would be in order.
So moved.
Support. It's been moved and supported to excuse trustee Brewer. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. We have a special resolution here, proclamation on Small Business Saturday that we approve every year just to highlight and encourage our residents to shop local, to take advantage of the locally owned stores here in the township as they start their holiday shopping season. So with that, I'll move adoption of the resolution. Is there support?
Support.
There is support by Karen. Any discussion? See none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. We have our agenda before us. Any additions or deletions? If not, a motion to approve.
Supervisor Fletcher, I'd like to add an item for discussion of the agenda. It's a continuation of the information request from the Board of Trustees to K2 Incorporated.
Yeah, okay, let me just add it here. Any other additions? Seeing none, a motion to, it's been moved as to approve it as amended. All those in favor, or is there support? Excuse me, can we get a support in there? Any support, there is support. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. Now we'll open up the public hearing. We're going to begin this evening with a public hearing on the corridor improvement plan and the TIF district that is currently proposed by our CIA board, Corridor Improvement Authority Board. And tonight is the opportunity for us to hear from residents, to hear your thoughts on what's being proposed and have a nice conversation and hear from everybody on that. To kind of kick it off, to give an update, last Friday, Brian, I know, participated in presentation to the Eaton County Commissioners Ways and Means Committee. And that committee voted unanimously to send it forward to the full commission to support the tax sharing agreement. There was also a meeting with the Lansing Community College Finance Committee, and they also supported moving forward with the project as well. So with that, we'll kick it off with Suzanne Schultz, who has been our consultant that has helped us through this process, to just give a brief overview of the plan. It won't be a long presentation, but just a brief overview to start the dialogue this evening. So Suzanne, welcome.
Good evening, Supervisor and trustees. Just a really quick, I didn't prepare a full presentation tonight. You've seen it multiple times. But really the core, especially for the audience members that are not familiar with the development and TIF plan, the core of the work is really focused around what will the Corridor Improvement Authority Board do within the development area. The development area for the Corridor Improvement area is from Broadbent to Waverly along Saginaw Highway Corridor. Of that entire area, there's only 2 locations that are proposed to do tax increment that would be collected. That money then would be used for basically one major purpose, and that's to focus on infrastructure investments within the development area. So the 2 sites where TIF would be collected are actually, there's a map over there on the right-hand side, would be the Brookside Crossings, which is the Ide property, and then Delta Crossings. The revenues from those would be collected in the form of taxes, and then a reimbursement would be available, for example, to Delta Crossings for public infrastructure. So county roads are proposed, a maintenance fund to go along with those roads is proposed, and covering those costs of infrastructure. Other public investments that could occur along the corridor include both hard and soft costs. One would be, for example, if MDOT were looking to turn the Saginaw Highway corridor into a boulevard, shared costs with the township could be included for a hard cost. And then soft costs such as planning and market studies to really try to activate and gain new investment on the east end of the corridor would be a focus. The TIF plan then for the development of TIF plan, the development portion of the plan talks about those aspirational projects that could occur. The Corridor Improvement Authority Board has been very serious and focused on getting a corridor plan done so they understand the priorities in the community and so that they can program dollars towards those priorities. And then the TIF portion is where it's being collected, which I just mentioned, and how it will be spent, as well as the duration. State law allows it to go up to 30 years. This plan only suggests 20 years. That tax collection, though, also has a ceiling to it of about $35 million. Once that number is reached, that ends. And so it could be a shorter duration than the 20 years. And then it goes back and all the taxing jurisdictions collect the rest of the money as it's, as it kind of resets once that period is done. It also includes a 20% pass-through to the other taxing jurisdictions. So Eaton County, Lansing Community College, and the library, in addition to receiving the base amount, which is set based on the amount they're collecting this year, would also get another 20% as it grows, as that pot grows on that tax increment. So that would help for inflation and other investments that they might want to make in the community. And really, the way that this entire plan has been constructed is focused on creating a public-private partnership. Thinking about how we're leveraging infrastructure without having the public put the money out there. So you or the County Road Commission didn't have to bond for a brand new road. That it's now facilitating and opening up additional land for development within the community, which then provides you with additional tax revenue. So it's really this partnership, and the way it works in this case, if we use the Delta Crossings as an example, the developer is using the tax dollars generated by the project to be reimbursed for that public infrastructure. As was mentioned, the CIA board reviewed, approved, and recommended the plan to the Township board on September 13th. And then you set the public hearing on October 4th. Notice of this public hearing was published in the Lansing State Journal. There were notices mailed, and then there was also postings that were placed along the corridor. We had an information open house. Some of these boards are from the November 4th open house that we held from the 4th to 7th, and then a website with information containing facts about the development and TIF plan, as well as the plan itself, and a video explaining it were available on the website. And so just in closing, this development and TIF plan really sets the stage for the ability for the township, for the Corridor Improvement Authority Board to collect resources and then disperse them for public infrastructure along the corridor for a limited duration. And then really think about how do we do new investment and encourage reinvestment along the eastern portion of the corridor. It is not an agreement with the developer that comes after the plan has been adopted. And it also will require that agreements be done with the 20% pass through to the taxing jurisdictions after the plan's adoption. So we have indication from those agencies, from Lansing Community College and Eaton County, that they're willing to go forward with that, which is what the state law intended, that we visit with them beforehand before you make a decision. But just to reiterate that if as it pertains to Delta crossings, that was part of this discussion because it helped facilitate some of the conversation and the resources and imagining how they could be used. But today you're not approving that project. Really, that will come in the development and reimbursement agreement when you negotiate that.
Great, well, thanks,
Thank
ma'am.
you.
Appreciate that overview. Before we get started, I just want to let folks who are standing in the back know there are some seats up here in the front and on the side. Definitely feel free to come and sit down and be comfortable. So don't feel like you have to stand in the back of the room for the meeting if you don't want to. Now, this is the opportunity to hear from the public on this plan. We'll ask you to come forward. If you'd like to speak this evening, we'd ask that you come up to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and then share with us your thoughts on the plan. We do ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes, and if you start to go over, we'll let you know that you've hit your time, but we just want to make sure that everybody has the opportunity to speak this evening if they would like to do so. And this is our opportunity to hear from you, so it's not intended to be a question and answer period. If you do have questions, you certainly are welcome to stay after and meet with the staff. We do have some information along the wall there that was presented during the open house that you can look at. There is a question and answer sheet on our website as well that people can refer to, but we want to hear tonight from people if you have thoughts and views on that. So with that, we'll open it up, and whoever would like to go first, you're welcome to step forward, come up to the podium and kick it off for us.
Good evening. I'm Susan Ward. I live at 733 Clark Road. And for those of you that aren't familiar with it, I am the 2nd Street west of Waverly. I read with interest the State Journal front page article regarding the Delta Crossings project. As a lifelong resident on the east side, I have long felt that our needs were often ignored. This project and the CIA only confirm that. It will be noted that no one on the board either works or lives east of Elmwood. At the time of my interview, I was informed that only 23 people had applied for the board, something that doesn't surprise me, as I'm sure most residents aren't interested or feel that fighting City Hall is a waste of your time. The east side of the township is the very area that should be considered for redevelopment. Our commercial property was either built in the early 60s or existed prior to the 50s. It was mentioned in the article that the process had been rushed and amounts of transparency minimal. I completely agree. The world of retail is not, nor will ever be what it was 50 years ago, 10 years ago, or even 2 years. To say that the Lansing Mall wasn't considered because its value has decreased speaks volumes. Also, the complete lack of any plans to improve the east end of the corridor need to be addressed. In fact, they should have been addressed long before we reached the stage. The east side has the former Dollar General, a Rafferty, Bank of America building, properties standing empty. In addition, we now have Hobby Lobby space standing open. The Klingman Furniture location has also again become empty because they had gone with a temporary tenant. All of these locations are large and easily could be remodeled to meet the needs of most clients. We also have the property from the original Burger King standing empty decades after they closed. To add to that, work was done on the drain last summer that resulted in an unused parking lot on the south side of Saginaw, just east of Rinker, completely destroyed and left that way. Does the realtor offering the property really think that that's a positive selling point? If I remember correctly, one of the reasons Art Van closed was because they said they could no longer compete with the online retailer. Do we really think that's going to change? The fact that Amazon is looking to increase their presence in our area only confirms the reality that online shopping has increased and will continue to do so. I retired from an industry that experienced that firsthand over a decade ago. To think that the travel industry will go back to the way it was is fallacy. The same can be said for the retail world. Perhaps one of our problems lies in the fact that we continue to look to large corporations as the answer. Well, don't tell that to Old Town because they're completely full with local businesses. Chain locations follow the edict of the corporate office. A local business will do everything possible to stay relevant to the community. Delta Township has strip malls on and off Saginaw who have never been completely leased and unlikely ever will. There is also extensive office space that is now empty because of the pandemic. People are choosing to work from home when their offices are reopening. I have friends who have chosen to work from home at least part-time because that's a good option for their family. Under its current condition, the traffic on Saginaw is awful. And as a result, I know of people who avoid traveling on it. I've already heard them say that Delta Crossing project will only increase the problem. I'm certain this will lead to more traffic on St. Joe and Willow highways. Something I'll bet the residents who live on those roads will really appreciate. As we continue to remove open green space, the situation with storm damage will only increase. Many years ago, when the area along East Saginaw was built up, I had neighbors who were forced to run sump pumps 24/7 because the increased asphalt no longer allowed the rainwater to soak into the ground. And that was before the storms increased in intensity and frequency. We know the situation will only worsen. The question also begs to be answered, can the existing sewer system handle this increase in usage?
Ma'am, you got your 3 minutes, so if you could wrap up.
Thank you.
Thank you much. We appreciate you being here. Anybody else next? Come up to the podium, state your name and address.
Good evening. My name is Chris Keck, 5405 South Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard in Lansing. I am the president of the Greater Lansing Building Trades, and I am also a business representative for the Plumbers and Pipe Fitters Local 333 in Lansing. I represent thousands of men and women in the building trades who live in the Greater Lansing area, including many that live right here in Delta Township. I am here tonight to speak in strong support for the TIF brought to you by the CIA and the Delta Crossings project in a whole. These funds are needed for the infrastructure. We ask that this be approved so that the men and women of the building trades can continue to make a living wage and benefits working on the Delta Crossings project while spending their hard-earned wages right here in Delta Township. I also want to thank the board and all involved for all of their hard work on this. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you, Chris. Anybody else would like to speak this evening? Come on up.
Good evening. My name is Jim Spitz, and I'm a resident of Delta Township. I'm a proud member of the Greater Lansing Building Trades Council, Local 665 electricians in Lansing, Michigan. I want to voice my strong support for the Delta Crossings project and the TIF plan to provide funds for the infrastructure in the public right of way. I work on this development, and I'm one of many proud union building trades members who both live in the community and are employed on this development. I ask the Township Board to support the Delta Crossings development. Thank you.
Thank you. Who'd like to be next?
Good evening, Supervisor and Trustees. My name is Trent Mock. I live over on 11840 Nixon Road, Grand Ledge. I want to voice my strong support for the Delta Crossing project. and the TIF plan to provide funds for the infrastructure and public right of way. This was an eyesore for years and years, and now it's starting to look like something. We've started a good thing, and let's finish it. I asked the Township Board to support the Delta Crossings development. Thank you.
Thank you. Would like to be next? Come on up. Come on up to this podium here.
Okay, good. Dave Berquist?
Yeah, come up to the podium, state your name, Dave.
Okay. Oh, the pen moving out the window. Okay, 6653 West Eaton Highway, Lansing. And
Dave, can you state your full name for the record?
David Berquist.
Thanks.
Thanks. So I think, I really hope the board considers that Delta Crossing is not the only game in the township. Amazon's putting up a fulfillment center 4 miles away, 1 million square feet. So brick and mortar versus Amazon with level 3 or whatever it is, supply chain management. And so that's should be considered. And also the suggestions I propose in place of the TIF and 14 million are things that could be done for a lot less cost, I believe, and done incrementally and make the corridor accessible to people who are challenged transportation wise, and the walkers, motorized wheelchairs, bicyclists, people with baby strollers, people pushing shopping carts up to their apartment area and leaving them. And so I urge consideration of looking at all weather 24/7 ways to get across Saginaw Highway from Delta Crossing or from Broadbent all the way to Waverly. Because the few times I've tried it, I was glad my Knight of Columbus life insurance policy was fully paid up. Because then if I get whacked, my estate will be none the worse. And so I'd say let private enterprise flourish. If it was such a wonderful deal, I would think investors would be lined up to put in those millions of dollars and reap the benefits of increased rents from the increased value. And rather than, well, okay, Delta Township, we've got possibly a $200 million investment here, and it's teetering on the head of a $13 million pin. You know, so you got kind of a guilt card going on, I feel. And I don't agree that it's an eyesore. The field was fine with me and with God's creatures, and paving and roofing over Delta, maybe there's some better options. And you know, to wait maybe 20 years, what if the rents don't show up? You know, is there a sunset on the Corridor Improvement Authority to where it's re-examined, zero-based budgeting at some point in the future? I hope that could be considered. And what was the other? Oh, and people have been there, done that. Flowerland, that was, wow, the Horrocks will be toast. It's not at all. And we're borrowing Peter, the mall, everything east of Canal to stock up in Delta Crossing. And then, well, even better news, now let's look at Brookside Crossing. And just staggering.
We're 3 minutes out, David, if you could wrap it up.
Oh, okay. Oh, and remote or self-checkout. Even Five Below, they've got 4 checkouts that are a computer. and one person to do the counter traditional and the troubleshoot the 4 checkouts. And how many consumer goods are those computers ever going to buy? Same with Walmart, Kroger's. And so completely skeptical. Please read what I've produced thoughtfully and with open minds. Thank you all.
Thank you, David. Appreciate you coming tonight. Like to be next. Come on up.
Good evening, trustees. My name is Deshaun Lee, 2517 East Mount Hope, Lansing, Michigan. Thank you for having us here today for this public hearing. Again, my name is Deshaun Lee. I am the Southeast representative of the Michigan Building and Construction Trade Council. I represent all 14 building trade affiliates, and I speak for all of them when I say we do support the Delta Crossing project and the proposed TIF. This project will be hiring local labor, paying living wages with benefits, and their wages will be spent in the local community. So we do support the TIF, and I hope that you trustees support it too. Thank you.
Thank you. Would like to be next?
Good evening. My name is Ed Bracamontes, 5021 Geraldine Drive, Lansing, Michigan. I'm a resident of the Township since 2000. I'm a proud member of the Greater Lansing Building Trades Council and union member of the Union of Painters and Allied Trades District Council 1F, Local 845 in Lansing, Michigan. I want to voice my strong support for the Delta Crossing project. And I want to ask the Township Board to support this Delta Crossing development. I'd like to see this project get completed and have Delta Township residents to take advantage of future jobs, which will help them and help the community and continue to see this township grow and get better. Thank you.
Thank you. Would like to be next? Anybody else in the audience would like to speak? Come on up.
Good evening. Aaron Pangborn with the IBEW in Lansing here. I also want to speak in favor of the TIF and the K2 development. It's going to put local residents to work here in Delta Township. So I want to speak in favor of that. So thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate you being here. Who else would like to speak this evening?
Good evening, board. My name is Steve Arbor. I live at 7445 Yorktown Road here in Lansing. Lived in the Delta Township, resident my whole life. I'm also a proud member of the Greater Lansing Building Trades Council and Local 665. I'm also here to support the Delta Crossing project. I'm also a proud member of the union building trades that live in this area and have also been employed on this project. So I ask for your support. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Also, I'd like to speak this evening. Now's the opportunity.
Good evening. My name is Chad Morrison, 3321 Remy Drive in Lansing. I'm with the Bricklayers Local 2. I am a business agent and a member of the Greater Lansing Labor Council. And on behalf of my membership, we would like to support the TIF for the development with K2. A lot of local families depend on these jobs to put food on their table, and then they invest back into the community. So it's important to my membership. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And who else would like to speak this evening?
My name is Raleigh Blauk. I live at 7223 Medallion Drive here in Delta Township. I was going over the proposal, this
CIA TIF proposal. And what stands out, or I look at table 2, which is the projects list, where we can see how much money is available or is estimated to become available through this and how it would be spent. And of course, most of it, there's $20.8 million that is estimated. Most of that, of course, $13.8 million would go to the Delta crossings. And of that $13.8 million, 13 million roughly will be for roads and utilities and communications, streets. And only 0.8 $800,000 is for non-motorized connections. Now, I think this is not enough. It stands out, it seems to me. We have, in Delta Township, we have a nice non-motorized transportation plan, which is being, over the years, I've watched it be developed and the trails being built. But that is only east of the expressway. So I don't think that this CIA TIF would be a golden opportunity to develop the non-motorized on this new Delta Crossings project, but it's not mentioned here at all. Well, it's barely mentioned. So I think this is a major flaw with it. I support the whole idea, but I think it should be changed around and pay attention and build on what we've got here in Delta Township with these great trails that we have been working on for many years and extend that to the other side as well, the other side of the freeway. So thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else like to speak this evening? Has the opportunity to come forward?
Good evening, everyone. I too, first off, Dan Sunday, 435 Harper's Way. Been a resident here in Delta Township for over 20 years now. And enjoyed living here so far. And I too am a proud member of the Greater Lansing Building Trades, Local 665 IBEW. So just want to voice my support for the development and giving us the opportunity to actually work on these projects and actually look forward to spending some of my money at some of the stores and restaurants that will eventually come in there. So that was about it. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Who else would like to speak this evening?
Arnold Weinfeld, 1720 Schoolhouse Road. I come here tonight to neither voice my support or opposition to what is before you. But when I was elected initially to school board, I remember one of the more veteran board members telling me that my primary responsibility to the people of the school district and the taxpayers was as a fiduciary, and to make sure that the funds that are allocated or spent as part of the school district are spent as effectively and as efficiently as possible. And so I would just ask that as you continue these discussions with the developer and come to whatever agreements you're going to come to, that you remember your role, your fiduciary responsibility role to the taxpayers of the township and the residents of this township, and that being the entire township. I've lived here over 35 years, all of it on the east side, and I will indeed be interested to see over the course of time, I realize it won't be overnight, over the course of time, what improvements will be done to the east side of the corridor, the original Delta Township. Thank you.
Thank you. Who else would like to speak this evening? Now is the opportunity to come forward.
Good evening. My name is Ben Dodson, 5800 Executive Drive, Lansing, Michigan. I am the business agent for Ironworkers Local 25, and I stand in support for our membership that resides here in Delta Township for the Delta Crossing project and support the TIF. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else in the audience like to speak this evening? Now's the opportunity. Anyone else? Has everybody spoken who would like to? We got one last call. Anybody else like to speak this evening? Okay, well, seeing no one, we'll close the public comment part. The clerk would like to read. We have received some letters of support from organizations and individuals. So she'll just read who they came from and what their position was. We won't read the actual letter, but she'll let us know. So go ahead, Mary.
ABC Contractors Association in support. Greater Lansing Building Trades in support. LEAP, Lansing Area, Lansing Economic Area Partnership in support. Ben Lyons, Eaton County Road Commission, in support. Greg Rambat, 1518 Pepper Hill Drive, spoke against. Steve Japinga from Lansing Regional Chamber of Commerce in support. William Brewer from 4804 Canyon Trail in opposition. Well, Ben sent 2 letters, Lyons did. William Transel from 4904 Plum Hollow in opposition. Rachel Kushner Murray, 1629 Pepper Hill Drive. In opposition. And Dave Berquist, he spoke tonight, but he also has sent 3 different letters.
All right, we appreciate that. Well, the next step of the process is at our next meeting, which will be on December 6th, is when we will actually bring the proposal up for a vote, up or down vote. So we certainly appreciate your input this evening and certainly take everything we have heard into consideration when we come back on December 6th to make our final consideration on whether or not to move forward with this project at all. But we certainly appreciate those of you who took the time and everything to come out this evening to share your thoughts and your views on that.
Just for clarity for the audience, all of the full letters were shared the day they arrived with the full board members. So every board member got every letter that we received.
Absolutely. Okay, well, great. Well, thank you. This will conclude the public hearing on the CIA plan and on the TIF district. So we'll continue now with the rest of our agenda. And the first thing that we have coming up, well, first we have public comments for items not for other items. So is there anybody here in the audience this evening who came to speak on other items this evening? David, yeah, if you want to speak on another item, you're welcome.
On Eaton Highway, our lot is a spaghetti lot, narrow lot, 2 acres and woods in the back. And on adjacent abutting property, there's a camouflage pontoon, or what do they call them? With the arch, Quonset hut, camouflage. And farther back, there's a tree stand. And checking with the township map of where shooting is allowed, there's certain restricted areas. And archery, bow hunting, if I read properly, is allowed anywhere in the township except for the certain heavily residential area north of Saginaw. And we have grandkids coming for the holiday. And to think that someone who thinks they see a deer really it turns out to be a granddaughter. And I was advised wear hunter colors, put the kids in highly visible colors. And so they're not being given the quiet enjoyment of our property that we've been on for 40+ years for that fear. This is the first year of the Quonset hut camouflage with a folding chair in it. And it's aimed like this, and our home is like where these two folks are. And it's maybe 30 yards inside the property line of the other property. So I'd like to urge folks to consider that we're not in some state forest 150 miles north of here. And people like to enjoy their property regardless of the hunting season. So I'm available for further discussion as things progress, I hope. Thank you all.
Thank you, David. Appreciate you raising that. Anybody else to speak this evening on other topics? Seeing no one going forward, we'll continue now with our agenda to the consent agenda. What's the pleasure of the board today on items on our consent agenda? Karen,
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
is there support?
Support.
There is support. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll on approving the consent agenda this evening?
Trustee Mohica,
Yes.
trustee Cascarella,
Yes.
trustee Brewer, trustee Bowen,
Yes.
treasurer Fedema,
Yes.
clerk Clark is yes, supervisor Fletcher.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Now we move to the items added to the agenda, the discussion on Dennis's request for information. Dennis.
Yeah, thanks again, Ken and the board here. I revised the request for additional information from K2. There was some consternation over the words of co-investment. So I removed that and put in reimbursement. Excuse me, but the premise is the same. The premise is that the whole TIF is predicated on a unmarketability without a reimbursement. And I think that's an easy thing to demonstrate as I put in the table from the last time. It's the same table as what was before. I've changed the wording and used reimbursement again. And the top table is actually increased sustained revenues. I think it's important for our residents to understand what is the long-term benefit. It's clearly from some of the feedback that we received from our residents that I don't think they see maybe the larger picture of what the return will be and the benefit of the township of sustained revenues when the 20-year reimbursement period is concluded. So I think, that clarification, and then also, the clarification of that, the assertion that without a reimbursement, that it's just not marketable, it's not feasible. And that's really easily portrayed by just doing comparable market rates, lease sale rates per square foot, not necessarily of Delta Crossing specifically, but just the area. And what would be the addition of cost for that would put it out of marketability for those parcels, those phases, if they had to absorb the infrastructure costs. It's a pretty easy show. And I just think that'll make it really clear for the residents. But I was hoping to have this discussion, but without trustee Brewer being here, she's bedside with her mother in the hospital. I would prefer that she would be here for this discussion. So I'd like to make a motion to table this tonight and take it up at our next meeting in the first meeting in December. So she can participate.
Technically, you can postpone. You can't table.
Why can't I?
Well, tabling is used for a different process.
No,
Okay. She's done Robert's rule. You can do what you want to do. She's just.
I'm just pointing it out.
Well, postpone, table, for it's in deference for all board members to have. I know Fonda is very interested in having this discussion. I mean, we all want to be able to show our residents really what the benefit is. And I think there's some clarity that will help by just asking K2 some of these assertions that were made at the very beginning, but it just hasn't been really articulated to the very concise way that I think we can all show our residents, really what the overall benefit will be and how it is unnecessary reimbursement in order to make it feasible. That's what the intent is here. I think it's an easy ask. I think it's very benign. And I know that the representatives of K2 have stated several times they would answer any questions of the board and beyond. And I would like to actually follow through and ask him to do so. I think this would be helpful for us as a board to justify voting on this. And I think it will also help our residents fully understand what the overall benefits are and the necessity of it, which is. So that is the rationale for it. The letter itself calls for Brian to communicate the language, the proposed language there, which we've talked about before. But because of Trustee Brewer not being here, I'd rather postpone the discussion until next board meeting.
Before we postpone it, Brian actually completed the top thing with all the data that was actually in the plan. So Brian, why don't you distribute that since we already have it and it's just the data that was in the plan anyway.
Actually, pull this up. At least for the top part of your request, Treasurer Fedola. I just took some data from the plan, but I think this gets to what you were asking for, at least in the top part with sustainable revenues. So if you look at the spreadsheet, and I have it up on the screen for people. First of all, this is the different phases of the development. This is right out of the plan. And I listed the sources there and page numbers so that if you want to, you can replicate this. But this is the investment, the true cash investment that's being proposed by Delta Crossings. And then this is the estimated taxable value that's being created per phase projected. These are numbers that have been worked on with Assessor Drosty. If you look at the across the top here, this gets into more of the revenues and the sharing. So currently, right now, the taxable value of the Delta Crossings property is roughly $3 million. So if you look at right now, in Delta Township, our operating millage and our paramedic millage combined, we receive roughly $18,000 a year in tax revenue. The line under it, the 60,000, that represents all the CIA captured jurisdictions. So that's Delta Township, Lansing Community College, the library, and Eaton County. If you add the jurisdictions that are subject to capture, that's what's collected now, cumulative. It does not count the school districts, the RESA, and the state education tax. Those are not capturable, so those are receiving their full value. Overall is roughly $200,000 is paid in taxes on that property as it stands right now as a base. So if the next column over, if you multiply that out by the 20 years, if this project were not to happen, this is roughly 362,000 is roughly the amount the township would bring in. This does not include the annual multiplier. So it's an estimate, it would be a little bit higher than that, you know, the 1 or 1.7 on average percent. There's not really a way to project that out 20 years, but this just gives you an idea of 20 years of the base value if the project did not go forward, the 1.2 million for the other capturable districts. So with the full project implementation and the value created as listed in the plan, based on the different phases, these would be the captured amounts. First for the township, roughly $8 million.
that again is 80% of all the new value. So that's taking out the 20% pass through. And then you have for the other captured taxing jurisdictions, including the township, roughly $29 million. The next one is a 20% pass through for 20 years. So this projected based on with the project moving forward with the 20% pass through, township will realize 2.2 million in additional revenue, which is roughly a 509% increase from the base value. All the captured taxing jurisdictions, 7.3, so same percentage increase. Moving forward to the last year of the plan, I think this gets to your sustainable revenues. When the plan is finished, in the last year of the CIA plan, it calls for $713,000 in revenue. So if you in 2041, so in 2042, this would be kind of the base. This is where the base would set. This is the amount the township, the full value that the township would receive. It actually would be a little bit higher again with whatever the multiplier is for that year moving forward. So that again is I have where it's at in the document or
Can I ask
table
you a
that's pulled from.
question on that?
Sure.
Brian, I'm a little confused. So if the current taxable value, that's the taxable value, and the revenue is $18,000. And so once it's completed, then you're saying that the net increase would be $713,000 for the entire Delta Crossings. A $200 million investment would garner $700,000 per year.
Yes.
That's what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
To the township.
Right, no, I
Township.
understand that. Okay, and so it's a very large percentage. And for the other taxing jurisdictions, it would be a lot more, because cumulatively, they have more millages than what our 5-6 mills.
The county does, yes.
Yeah, you're right.
LCC and the library are, LCC is slightly less. The library is only 1 mill, similar to the paramedic millage.
Right, okay.
And keep in mind the entities I list here, Eaton, Risa, Grand Ledge School District, and the state continue to collect on the full. So whatever value is added, they're collecting their full millage. There's no capture on those.
I understand that. So this sort of gets to the heart of the question of trying to, show what the increase would be after it's done and what the percentage and the dollar amount would be. So I want to thank you and Ted for that. What is the second table that you're showing here?
What are you talking about down here?
Just the phases.
Yeah,
Those are just the phases of the value that's being created.
Okay, so that's just in support of the first table.
Correct.
Okay, all right.
For as a reference point.
So, and we can have this discussion, next week, but, again, in terms of marketability, that, I'm curious as to if the market rate for comparable types of investments in these different phases, some are going to be commercial, some are going to be retail, some are going to be restaurants, is this kind of range that's out there, that's discernible. And by phase, and only I think K2 knows what the future phases are going to be based on not their taxable value, but they have some idea what that is and what types of buildings that would probably be. And I'm not saying a specific square footage, I'm just saying a range. What would be the added cost to that if they had to absorb the infrastructure? And the assertion is that knocks them out of being feasible, being marketable, which I assume is probably correct, but it's not quantified anywhere. in the documents. And I just think that would be helpful.
Yeah.
Beth, is that Andrea?
So on the top table here, Brian, when we look at the current taxable value and the current tax revenue for Delta Township of this piece of property, it's $18,000 per year.
Correct.
Correct. And then if we look at the second to the last column, we expect it in 20 years to go up to $713,000 per year.
Correct.
But the numbers in between that, the capture over the 20 years, and the estimated, the capture over the 20 years and the gain on 20 years, that is cumulative 20 years, correct? That is not per year?
That is correct.
Okay, so when we're looking at $8.8 million over 20 years captured, we're kind of apples and oranges here because we're looking at per year on those other two. And I just wanted to clarify, this is cumulative. So thank you for clarifying that. And then down here on the phases, my understanding is that the reimbursement that is being sought is only for phase one of this six plus phase project. Is that correct?
No, that's not correct.
Okay.
So the reimbursement that's being sought is for public infrastructure related to this project.
The entire project.
How it's broken out per phase. I mean, the phases are merely headers in terms of, different things that are being constructed. The Marketplace extension and the Carlson Road extension, water and sewer, lift station improvements. I mean, those are throughout the project.
So some of it hasn't been done yet.
Correct.
Okay.
So the 14.3 million is an estimate of total infrastructure to serve the project, which is less than the amount that it's less than their current estimate, which is up to 19 or so million. And it
So
also
how-
does not include public infrastructure for like single family homes, streets that will eventually be turned over to the county. This is centered on the main roads, water and sewer, that type of thing.
Okay. And what happens if these phases don't happen? If something happens, the economy shifts, it's no longer, feasible for K2 to make money on this project, they walk away. How does that affect all of these other numbers?
I can answer that, but we do have our attorney, Jessica Wood here from Dickinson Wright. And she has dealt with a lot of TIF districts and developers agreements and reimbursement agreements.
Okay.
She may be able to better articulate what happens when the value is not fully created.
Great. So good evening, everyone. So just to remind you that this is just the plan portion, and then the development agreement and reimbursement agreement would be the next step. So you're right to point out that this is just a plan and these are just projections. If this value does not in fact occur, then the developer can't seek reimbursement, period. So
we're not on the hook for infrastructure that's never put in.
absolutely, that's right. And just so you know, you have to do a fair amount of projecting in these plans, which is always a little bit unsettling. But again, the only thing that is actually contractually binding, so to speak, is that development and reimbursement agreement. And even that would have built within it several different milestones for the developer. And of course, evidentiary requirements that they have actually undertaken the improvements and receipts and evaluation. So,
okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
And keep in mind, so the infrastructure that's put in is obviously going to be phased. It's not all put in at once. And the value is not all created at once. So how that's tiered in an agreement is, something that will be in the next step.
And of course, the assessor plays a big role in this as well, because annually the assessor values all of these things. So depending on the economy and all sorts of factors beyond our control, those go up and down.
And the 200 million I see is for the entire project, for all phases, not just the first and second. That was my misunderstanding on that. So thank you for this. It clarifies that.
Sure. Andrea.
Yeah, I have, Jessica, if you don't
Oh,
mind,
sure.
because maybe this is something you can answer as well. And I appreciate Mr. Fedewa modifying, I guess, his document and trying to use verbiage that may be more appropriate. I do still have some concerns with even referencing unmarketability. And I guess I looked through our packet, and what's been prepared, the information that we've been provided, and in our packet for our public hearing tonight, you know, it talks about the TIF and the corridor improvement statute. And you know, the purpose of that and what I see in there, tools to attract investment, assist with public-private partnerships, attract private investment, leverage opportunities such as matching dollars for grants and enhancements for projects. And I don't see marketability anywhere. And it just raises current concerns for me that we're going down a road in requiring things that aren't consistent with the law. And can you just speak to that?
I'm happy to speak to that. So again, and this is just an objective interpretation of the law. I'm neither pro nor against this project, just so you know. But the legal standard is very clear, and it is not the doomed to failure standard by any means. These are economic incentives. And so actually the standard is right within the statute itself in a couple of different places. And I don't have the whole statute with me, but I have portions of it. It's if a governing body of a municipality, that's you, decides that it is in the best interest of the public to redevelop its commercial corridors and to promote economic growth, the governing body may. That is the standard. And so in order to further economic development purposes, it can do that. It's an incentive, an attraction, an invitation to developers to come and do this here instead of somewhere else. There is not it's not need-based as a legal matter. Now, as a policy matter, if you were to decide you wanted all developments to be need-based, that would be up to you as a policy-making body. But that's not in the law, if that's helpful.
Yes, thank you
Okay.
for clarifying that.
Yeah. The other thing is, I think I mentioned before, I made some notes here that if the plan is approved, there's still this whole next step about a development agreement being negotiated, and that's a whole nother can of worms. And then, as has been mentioned several times, but I think it bears repeating, the reimbursements may only be by law for public infrastructure. And those two are narrowly defined in the act itself. So public facilities, and it's kind of a long, dense definition, so I won't read it, but it involves things like streets, plazas, pedestrian malls, improvements to those recreation facilities, parking facilities, transit-oriented development, rights of way structures, infrastructure, things that are going to be used or dedicated for use by the public primarily. Now, that's not to say that a private entity cannot benefit, because obviously these are economic incentives for developers, but they're very narrowly defined. And you would be reimbursing this developer for public infrastructure that you would own, just to be clear. So that was the last point, I guess, that came to mind. So any other questions about the statute? Yeah.
Yes.
Well, we don't own roads, number one. The Eaton County Road Commission owns.
Well, the other
Yeah,
infrastructure
so,
here, yeah.
but yeah, I understand the distinction there. And I guess rather than saying feasibility, we switch that to incentive. So it's a policy by this board that the development of this property, it's a policy decision to make an incentive because of what the outcome will be. And I want to be clear, I said, I voted for the CIA just for that reason, So we set aside revenues that we'll collect so we can help the corridor. Because I just don't think this board or any future board is going to come to consensus of what needs to be done. That's why I voted for a CIA, which has business people on it. But to the point of the agreement, and I don't want to get into details on that because that's really where the rubber meets the road. It's like, well, okay, so what comes first, the chicken or the egg? Do you have the building before the infrastructure? Do you have the infrastructure before the building? If you build the infrastructure and the building doesn't happen, is any or all part of it or none of it reimbursable? And what's the time frame on that? What's the points, the deliverables that you mentioned? I mean, that's really what it comes down to protect the residents, and that's my foremost concern is protecting the residents in this endeavor. So hopefully it succeeds. I think everybody wants it to succeed, but that is the caveat, is protecting the residents and that sort of reimbursement. So that will be a discussion for a future time. And I realize that. So thank you. Thank you.
And to your point, it really is an art form to draft those development agreements, and they contain those very requirements. So, you know, those development phases and what needs to be accomplished before they get any type of reimbursement. So we would certainly err on the side of protecting the township and have that in mind when that was being negotiated.
Yeah, it sounds like the fear is that infrastructure will be put in, that the project won't actually be built, the tax revenue won't be there, and we will pay for infrastructure that doesn't get used. And it doesn't work that way. You know, if the revenue doesn't come in, he doesn't get reimbursed for it, and it doesn't happen.
So what happens to the infrastructure? Does it just go fallow?
It's there. If anything does get built, it's there. It's
right. So it's still an obligation of the taxing jurisdiction, the Eaton County Road Commission, for example, to have to maintain it. It'll be put over, it will be a private at that point, or when does it come public, I guess? And these are questions not now, but I mean, as we get into the development agreement.
Sure, but when it gets built, it gets turned over to the road commission. So if it's built, it'll be turned over to the road commission. But there's money planned
immediately or after the buildings go up. I mean, these are the questions I think need to be answered when we get into the development agreement. So
when we get into it.
yeah, we don't need to now, but it's just a lot of discussions I think we need to have.
So are we done here tonight, or do we move on now? Okay. We're not in public comment, sir. At the end of the meeting, we'll have a chance for public comment if you want to have. So I guess we're at the manager's report, Brian.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor and board members. Not a lot to report tonight. Later this week, I will be at a closing for the property on North Canal right by the Drolette Community Center. If you remember, we received a DNR grant for that piece of property, so we are closing on that. And we already closed on the little parcel right outside of Sharp Park on Elmwood, which was also a DNR grant. So those two things will be closed up. And then lastly, which you had already mentioned, we met with the Eaton County Ways and Means Committee. Jessica is preparing tax sharing agreements. I know the library board asked for a draft as well. Tonight I was at their meeting as well. So that's all the updates I have, but happy to answer any questions.
Any questions, Brian?
Question. Did the Ways and Means Committee at the county express any misgivings about giving up tax revenue, since we know that the county has been having trouble balancing their budget for the past few years?
Well, thought I saw Jeannie and Jeremy are both here from the commission. I don't want to speak for all of them, but in our presentation, there really wasn't any misgivings. They were excited about the additional revenue, the 20% that comes through, and the public-private partnership that comes along with the plan, and they. Of course, being a county, they're involved in other TIFs, so I think they understood that they're not necessarily, they're not giving up value that's created. They're foregoing some future value that this plan will help incentivize. So they were excited about the plan, and actually the conversation turned to the corridor improvement planning and excitement about that. So that was my take on it. If that's a different than the chairman or Commissioner Pearl Wright, feel free to chime in to correct me.
Well, thank you. I just want to
And-
make sure that we're being good
Sure,
partners
come
with
on
the
up to the
county.
microphone, Jeremy, so you're on camera, so to speak.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for the invitation, Mr. Supervisor, Mr. Treasurer. Didn't plan on saying anything tonight. No, Beth, you asked a great question about the financial stability of the county. To answer your question, it's not the best. Like every taxing jurisdiction, we do have pension problems. Our pensions are only funded at 59%. Now, we're making massive strides. I would love to take credit for this being a politician, but I can't. I got to give it to Terrence Augustine. When Terrence was chairman of the board, when we reconciled the budget year, there was $1 million surplus. So we opted to put that into pensions. So we're making progress. And our healthcare, that's another big issue that affects our county. We are self-insured. We have about a little over $1 million surplus in our self-insured account. And then we have, of course, reinsurance if we have several catastrophic claims. So we're good with that. Now, we did have $1.6 million in fund revenue before we started the budget negotiations in February of this year. What has the good thing and the bad thing, it's the ARPA money that's come in. When I was on TV and I said, we've got $21 million coming in, I knew what it was like to be a sugar daddy. All of a sudden, people that I didn't even know, they're like, hey, Big Jared, can I get some of that? So we did use, we have not, we used $50,000 of that for a broadband strategy survey. And we did use 1.8 million to balance our budget. Now, the ARPA money has to be expensed by 2024. So by the time 2024 comes, I probably won't be on the board. I don't know about Jeannie. Jeannie's an absolute delight to work with. You're lucky to have her. But with the projected revenue that's coming in for this development, it will offset. We're giving up a little in the short term, but as the projections indicate, I don't see the one that we used Friday. But as the development gets through phase 6, that's where the revenue starts coming in. And I anticipate that to be about the time that we have expensed all our ARPA funds. So we at Ways and Means, we talked about this, and it was a unanimous vote to direct our controller, John Fuentes, to begin drafting the applicable documents. So what are your questions of me?
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
That's fine.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Being here. Let's get that vote. Okay, anything else?
No, just also on the rec, I did not see with the crowd, but Tony Glasgow from LCC is also here. So I really appreciate her help in coordinating meetings with the college and her guidance with that. And so.
Yes, thank you. We certainly appreciate LCC's engagement on this. And it's hard to see it through the crowd there, but it's great to have you here tonight. So if there's no more questions for Brian, we'll take a final public comment. David, you wanted to say something during final public? Yep, up at the podium.
Delta is we think, or I think of us as Eaton County. We are the most superlative, the biggest, the busiest, the most investment. And so Eaton County Road Commission, their resources are very strained. They're, to me, with some engineer background, they're not able to be proactive on roads. They're reactive when they get so bad enough that if you dodge one pothole, you hit 2 more, then something will happen. And so to lay on yet another level of efforts for them, when already we have gridlocks now and again, not days long, but lined up all the way through the mercantile area of the west of the expressway, practically to Broadbent, and trying to negotiate the interchange with 69 and 96 off of Saginaw. And so, and I think that Amazon with this fulfillment center, they are the big dog. K2 in this project, Delta Crossings, that's in the rounding differences on their financial statement. So I don't see fulfillment center say, oh my gosh, Delta Crossing, Broadbent, Brookside Crossing, oh, let's quit and leave. They have, you know, they're sophisticated and to be reckoned with. And as gasoline could go up and people will say, well, I'm not driving, I'll let Amazon Prime bring it to my house, which is very common. You see the trucks coming out in the morning, UPS and whoever. So caution, are we really duplicating what happened at Lansing Mall and the strip malls to the east? And it's, to me, just not sustainable. That idea of Amazon, like it or not, I think that's what America is going to look like. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other final public comment this evening? Any final board comments this evening? Seeing none and seeing no further business before us, we are adjourned.